what are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
Who's us?
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. How you doing today, Wilbur?
Hey, I'm blessed and highly favored.
That's always great to hear, my friend. And you're tuned into another righteous and holy episode. And today's episode, we're going to talk about living in peace. Living in peace. You know, we have so many things that disrupt peace in this world.
Yes.
That some of them are the fault of our own based on how we live and not doing the things that we need to do the way that we need to do them. But then also there are certain things that disrupt our peace in the world that are not causes of our own, that just happen because of what's going on in society. And so, but whatever it is, whether it's our fault or whether society disrupts our peace, it's important that we constantly strive to live in peace, because God desires that we live in peace. God desires that we have an abundance, that we live in prosperity, and that we utilize all that we have to, build up his kingdom in everything that we do. And so we want to make sure that when you're living in peace, that you have a good retirement, that you maximize your income, and that you understand the cultural relevance of those things, right? So today, Will, that's where we're going. Retirement, living in peace, retirement God's way. We want to maximize that income. We want to get things where they need to be, because Scripture also says that the wise, they store up, when you're wise. That's key. There's a lot of people that try, very few people store up and save and do things the right way. And most times it's because they lack wisdom. It's the reason why you're not storing up. But then, so we want to just talk about that for a minute, Will, about, hey, so we don't care where you are, what's going on. We know that you need to store up some things. So Will, I see it in your face. I kind of hear it in your grunts, that you want to say something else came to mind other than what we already had planned out. So go.
Well, I think about peace, peace that surpasses all understanding. That's, the older I get in life, the more I understand and I appreciate peace.
Yeah.
That I understand now why, on a day-to-day basis, I think I pray for peace more than I pray for anything else. That peace that surpasses all understanding, it's something about peace, about peace of mind. And, ironically, that's the one thing I tell my clients when I meet with people on a daily basis, when we're doing our retirement planning, we're doing our financial planning, and they ask me, Mr. Hamilton, what is your gift? How, what are you trying to do? What is your goal for me? And I tell them, my goal is to create peace for you. My job is to create peace around your finances, to create peace around your retirement, to create peace, in your home. Of course, we know that unfortunately, more people get divorced because of money than anything else. So if we can help to create some peace around your finances, well, it's a greater likelihood that we have some peace in your marriage.
Yeah.
And we can, see more successful, healthy marriages. So, for me, I'm praying for peace, but I'm also trying to be a giver of peace, through the financial planning, through retirement planning. And, we all play a part in that. We can help to create more peace in our own lives by being wise, being good stewards, of what God has given us, and making sure that we're taking care of and cherishing all that comes into the storehouse, making sure that we give him his 10% first. I'm a firm believer in making sure that, if I want to keep receiving the blessings from God, I need to bless God with my first fruits. So I'm a firm believer, as soon as I get $1 come in, I'm going to make sure that at least out of that $1.10 goes back to him, immediately before I go and buy anything for myself or pay a bill or do anything. I want to make sure that he knows that I'm appreciative and I'm thankful and I'm grateful. because he didn't have to give it to me.
Yeah.
But I'm always grateful and thankful that he did. So I want to make sure that he knows that. So I'm going to, give that 10%, back to God to make sure that, I'm right with him first and foremost. Now, after that, then I sit down and I start breaking down, my financial plan, and I start making sure that I'm, putting some money away for a rainy day. Make sure I'm paying all my bills and paying the bills on time, so you're not acquiring those late fees and those things that kind of run up on us. And of course, we've all been in places where finances and money were tight before, and you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're saying, look, well, I don't get the money come into here, but I got to take care of this. So what I'm gonna do is, well, it's okay if it's late by a couple of days, but not understanding the power of compound interest and how money works. And we keep assessing these late fees. If you go and add up those late fees that you're paying over the course of a year, you can pay $1,500 in late fees. Whether it's on your phone bill, whether it's on your mortgage, whether it's on your, your rent, whether it's on your cell phone bill, those late fees, those things add up. So just becoming a better steward over what God has given us and making sure that we take care of the small things.
Yeah.
We always kind of, we tend to overlook those small things, not understand how much they play a big part in our overall success. So I think with us, being more, judicious and being better stewards of what God has given us, and making sure that, we pray for peace, because when you pray for peace, God gives you a calmness. He gives you a steadiness. And that's when you can do the best job of sitting down and doing the overall evaluation of where you are. See, all of us, we run from that budget word, and we don't want to, sit down and take the necessary steps, but there's no way around it. I always say there's no shortcuts to success. So if you want to have peace in your finances, in your life, you got to take your time and be a good steward and sit down and do a proper evaluation of where you are and where you want to go. And I promise you, if you just take that first step, God will help you take the next two.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so we come to mind with that, right? Peace with God, your finances being stable. And like you said, a lot of times that's what happens in marriages end because there's no peace in the finances, and it disrupts the home. Those things you just talked about the late fees and all of these things, and we don't really account for these things. And as we said today, talking about maximizing income and living in peace. And those are some things that you just spoke about that minimize our income. And so what we want everybody to understand is that we don't want you to have a minimal mindset. God doesn't want you to live in the minimum, but God wants you to max out. He wants you to have the fullness of what he has in store for you. So we want you to have that because that's what God desires for you. And so we're talking about living in peace today. And so we're also living in peace now helps us live in peace in retirement. Mm-hmm. And I think too often we don't consider the later because we're so focused on the now, which is okay to a degree. But when you focus on the now, you have to have a goal in mind for your now, because there's going to be a later.
Yes.
Right? We don't know when later is going to come. We don't know what later will look like. But what we want everybody to realize is you don't know the future, but you can still plan for an unknown future, and you can dictate how certain things go, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's where retirement comes in, and the basics of income retirement come in, right? There's some studies that say that 40% of households could run short of money in retirement. Mm-hmm. And that's an alarming thing, because a lot of these same people are people that have, taken care of their families, taking care of their kids, giving their kids opportunities, help their kids go to colleges. These are the same people that have made the sacrifice to give that 10 cents out of that dollar, back to God and paying their tithes. And they've been doing all these things, but they hadn't taken care of themselves properly. And so how concerned should we be about these types of things in retirement?
We should be extremely concerned. I mean, we have a retirement crisis in the United States of America. I mean, let alone, among other things, we have going on right now in the United States of America. But, retirement planning is something that we have to take more serious because we're blessed with technology and medical advancements where people are living longer. Well, if you're living longer, that means you're going to need money for a longer period of time, which means you're going to need more money. You know, because I don't think nobody plans on checking out early.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm telling the Lord every day, I want to see 90 plus, happy, healthy, and in my right mind. Well, that means I need to be planning to see that, which means there are going to be bills that come along with, you know, me being around at 90. You know, and of course, due to inflation and cost of living, well, whatever the bill is today is going to be a whole lot more in the future. You know, there are studies that say, you know, just in healthcare costs, you know, for retirement planning purposes, you should have at least, you know, $150,000 to $200,000 put aside, because we understand Medicare Part A and B doesn't cover 100% of things. It only covers 80%, and then you have to have a Medicare supplement of some sort to cover the other 20%, and there's still out-of-pocket costs and prescriptions and drugs and medication and things that, you know, come along with, you know, living longer. You know, there's a price to be paid for being here. So, you know, we have to understand and take all these things into consideration because, you know, we sit down and I meet with clients and, you know, we're putting together their retirement plan. I say, well, look, our job is to plan the end in the beginning. We got to look and see what you want the future to look like.
Yeah.
And we have to start planning for that future today. We got to start saving today for the life you want to live later on.
Yeah.
Because if you don't plan for the life that you want to live later on, you're going to have to take whatever life is given to you later on. And see, one thing we know, you don't always like every gift that you receive. But if you buy the gift,
Yeah.
it's a greater chance that you appreciate and that you like it. So, you know, how many times have you seen a kid or you see someone be ungrateful? You know, we say, we would be glad somebody gave you something.
Yeah.
Well, that ain't always true. You know, we've all received something in life and like, you know what?
We ain't really.
I'm appreciative. I appreciate it, but I could have used something else, or I would have rather have done this, or I wish, you know, they would have bought me that instead of getting me this particular item. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily ungrateful. Is that the gift they may have gotten you may not be useful or beneficial to you. But if you buy it, you're going to buy something that's going to be useful and beneficial to you in your life. And that's how you have to look at your retirement. You have to put money away. You have to save. You have to invest into what you want your future to look like. If you don't invest into your future, what do you expect to have in the future? You're not going to have a successful future if you don't plan right now and invest in the present. There's no way around it. You know, there has to be a return on an investment. But if you don't invest in them, there won't be a return. It's just like when we send our kids to college and they go on to get education. I know you know this right now.
Yeah.
You have several daughters.
Yeah.
And enjoying the high levels of institutional learning. And you're putting them in position
Yeah.
to put themselves in a position where they can go further, where they can be greater, where they can do more, and they can start out ahead and stay ahead.
Yes.
But they got to get some out of the position you put them in. See, you can get them to school, but they got to do the work.
That's right.
You know, they got to make sure that they take the next step and seek out internships and seek out job opportunities and maximize opportunities, not to just be in class, but do their best while they're in class.
That's correct.
To get all the information and knowledge out so they can go utilize it to have a better future. So we have to look at our retirements the same way. You know, as much like if anybody who's ever been on a plane, they tell you, before you try to put the mask on anybody else, you got to save yourself first. You know, they say before you jump in the water, make sure that your life vest is on and securely fastened.
Yeah.
And before you try to put somebody else's on. And all too often in life, we're so busy trying to tell everybody else what they should be doing or how to put on their life vest, but we ain't put on our own. I see it on far too many occasions when I see husbands and wives and, you know, single mothers and people coming to my office and they've done everything they could to take care of their kids and take care of their families to the point where they've given their last dollar. They don't know how they're going to make it, sacrificing for someone who's not willing to sacrifice for themselves. And that's where we have to cut the cord. At some particular point in time, you have to save yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have to understand that I'm going to do everything I can do to help you, but I can't help you if I can't take care of me? Now, both of us in a situation where neither one of us got nowhere to stay. But at least if I pay my bills first and I save for retirement first and I take care of that and I make a promise that I'm not going to dip into anything that is going to affect my lifestyle and my livelihood first. Now, anything else I have after that, I'm willing to share, willing to give, I'm willing to help. Because if you fail to achieve your level of success in life and you don't come through and you don't be who God has created you to be, at least I got somewhere you can come back and stay for a little while you get back on your feet. Otherwise, we both gonna be looking for somewhere to stay together.
No, that is exactly true. So we, these are the type of things that end up happening with, swings in life, I would say is what happens. So we have to be prepared for the swings, right? We can't just allow the swings to dictate how we're going to live, but know that swings in life are going to come.
Absolutely.
And as they come, we're prepared for them. And then also something else you hit on it, about, that money and those spending leaks is what I would call it. When you are taking care of the kids, taking care of everybody else, and your money is steady leaking out. Taking care of everybody else, steady drip is going out, but you're not retaining enough of those things, right? Because every time something comes up, you just decide, oh, okay, well, I have this. Well, I'm going to go ahead and help them out. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and take care of it.
Oh, I tell people, I say, look here, you can't fill up a bucket with a hole in it. So for me, what I look at and evaluate before I decide to give, does their bucket have a hole in it? Does their character warrant me giving to them? If I don't agree with your character, there's probably a good likelihood of me not agreeing with what you're going to do with this money. So for me, I'm going to be hesitant or probably not going to give to that particular cause. Now, there's times when I see someone that may not be where they want to be in life, but I can see their character and I can see where they're going based on how they operate, and I can see their connection with God. And if I see that, I'm willing to invest into that because I know that good tree is going to bear fruit. God is not going to let me down. He ain't going to let me plant that seed in bad ground. And sometimes there may not be a fruit on that tree just yet, but that tree's still growing and God is still working on it. He's still cultivating it. It's my job, and he might have just put me in a position to give it a little water, give it a little sunlight and help it grow. But I'm a firm believer in a good tree bearing fruit. And I think before you start just giving your money away to anyone, that includes your kids, we got to evaluate to see, okay, well, your kid better than anybody else. So you have to be honest and transparent. Son, where are you going? What are you doing? What kind of work are you putting into this particular opportunity that you say you want to go after? I'm willing to invest in and everything I have into my son's futures, but they got to be willing to put in some sweat equity along the way. And their sweat equity, I've come to learn, is sometimes different from mine. And that's okay, because what used to be maybe physical labor for me may be a mental hurdle or challenge for them. Because see, work has changed over time. My dad always tell me, said, your work can look like my work.
Yeah.
I said, well, you put me in a situation where now I can do a different kind of work. And just like his work didn't look like his daddy work. Yeah. And his daddy work. Yeah. So, we've come a long way from doing the kind of work that, our forefathers, were doing, but we still have to put in work. Yeah. So we have to understand that sometimes the work doesn't look the way we want it to look or we think it should look, but there's still work being done, and I'm willing to invest into someone who's willing to put the work in. So, for all our parents out there, aunts, uncles, anyone who wants to give, make sure that whatever and whoever you're giving to, make sure that they're willing to put in the work, they're putting in some sacrifice, and also they have some skin in the game. Yeah. You want to work with people who are willing to go all in on themselves, because if we lose, we can lose together. Yeah. And then we can talk about it and we can regroup. And any loss that you have in the short term, as long as God connected to it, it's not a loss, it's a lesson. And we'll be right back in a minute.
Yes, welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, The Truth About Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner, Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And like we said, this episode is entitled Living in Peace, Living in Peace. We want to do things God's way. We want to maximize our income. We want to have what God desires for us to have. And then we want to do with what God has blessed us with what we need to do so that we can have peace in our life. So I want to go back to something you said earlier about that bucket having a hole in it. And so while buckets aren't supposed to have holes in it, right? And so we want to check the bucket to see if they have holes in it. And if a bucket doesn't have a hole in it, then now we can put some things in there. Also, in terms of a bucket, there's a bucket strategy of, kind of like labeling, how you do your retirement, right? So if you could give us and people these different buckets of retirement money that we need to strategize and have so that we can retire and live in peace.
So one of the biggest things I tell people you have to identify is obviously where you are. And obviously, like I said, write it down to make it plain and having that budget in place first so we know what steps and how we're going to fill up the bucket and what we have to fill up the bucket with. And that's first and foremost. And I can't, highlight that enough. Okay. Because, we all know the hardest step is the first step, and just getting people to take that initial step and let God take the next one will go such a long way. But, when it comes to retirement planning, you want to identify, the right types of buckets to have money in. Obviously, we have short-term, intermediate, long-term. We always tell people, retirement is what I need to maintain my standard of living for the rest of my life. Investments are what I have left over after I've secured my retirement. So a lot of times we have people putting money in the wrong buckets because they haven't had a chance to identify what they need to satisfy their retirement goals and objectives. See, when you don't have a goal and objective laid out, there's no way you can fill up the proper bucket to make sure you get the proper return on investment. And you don't know what you should be invested in. So we get a lot of people that get misconstrued and have money in the wrong places doing the wrong thing because they haven't identified what kind of rate of return they even need to achieve in order to accomplish a certain goal. So if we know I've done my retirement plan and I want to have $8,000 a month in retirement and I'm going to have Social Security that's going to give me $2,500, we can calculate down to the dollar exactly how much you need to invest right now based on the time and frame in which you want to retire and how that money needs to be invested and what kind of return on investment you need to have in order to accomplish that goal. And you'll see people that are investing and all their money's in CDs, all your money's in fixed income accounts, but you need to be averaging an 8% return to accomplish your retirement goal. But then you're going to be mad you invest all this time and then you're going to be short of your goal and realize you got to work 5 to 10 more years. Well, it wasn't the CD fault. It wasn't the fixed income account fault. It was your fault because your money wasn't in the right place to achieve the right return on the investment in order to accomplish the goal. So when I put together a plan, the plan is about identifying my areas of weakness. It's about identifying my areas of strength. It's about identifying everything overall that I'm doing. So now I know how to marry everything together and make sure everything's working on one accord. So when I put together my retirement plan, I've analyzed approximate Social Security. I've analyzed if I have a government pension or a state pension. I've analyzed if I have a 401k, if I have a SEP plan, my own personal IRA I'm investing in, my brokerage account. I'm looking at all these places and I'm putting it all together to see what kind of income this is going to produce. And now I know based on how much money I'm investing in the rate of return I need to have, now I know how to invest my funds. I know if I need to be in some type of index fund, if I need to be in some type of aggressive high yield growth fund, if I need to be in some type of, AI tech fund, if I need to be in something that's a little bit more conservative, but I have to identify what I'm trying to get accomplished first. And there's a lot of different factors that go into identifying my buckets and where the money needs to go and things that we have to think about that we never think about beforehand. So we have obviously the first thing, obviously, longevity. We have that we touched on as far as me saying earlier, I want to live 90 plus happy and healthy. Well, I got to take that into consideration. We talked about, of course, the medical and technical advancements that come along that are benefiting people's health and people living longer. That's another item we have to address. We talked about how much expenses are from a health insurance standpoint, not just now, but into the future, and how costs will continue to go up. We also have inflation, how inflation has been killing us for the past 5 years. I mean, if you had $10,000 5 years ago, that $10,000 is only worth $7,500 today, just based on inflation alone. So right there, that's eating away at your money, and that's made the value of a dollar consistently drop a whole lot faster than expected. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. So when we have longevity issues, we have health, we have inflation, we have market swings. Just this past April, we witnessed, based on, some specific words that came from the Oval Office. And there was a lot of talk about tariffs. And the tariff talk is going on and on. People have talked about it ad nauseum. But that specific week, that talk led to a 20% decline in the market over about a week period, where now the market has swung and has now recovered from that 20% drop in April, and now we're back positive for the year. So we were up for the year. Then we were down for the year. Then we were back up. And this is all in the matter of 4 to 5 months. We're in, September now. But this market swing was in April, and we've back since recovered from that. And now positive double digits for the year in your return on your investment. So did you stay the course? Understanding how market swings and how the market is going to fluctuate. But did you have a plan of action that told you what to do, when to do, and how to do? But see, if you have that plan, like we were telling everybody since the beginning of the year, then you knew to hold steady. You knew what to do when the market had a swing or an adjustment. You knew what to do when good times and bad times came. So we didn't have to think about what do I need to do next, because we already planned for what we're going to do next. And then, of course, we have those spin releases, as you talked about, and, said we can't fill up that bucket with a hole in it. So when you put all those things together, it helps you create a well-rounded plan where now you're leaving no stone unturned. When you're planning for your retirement, you have to think about long-term care costs. You have to think about healthcare costs. You have to think about inflation. You have to think about market swings. And you have to think about those spending leaks, AKA kids, and people that you're trying to take care of and be there for. And like I say, kids are never out of your pocket.
Yeah.
As they grow up, they just, how they're in your pocket may change, and it fluctuates. But, I don't have any daughters, but, I know you have several. So now you have some weddings that, have to foot the bill for, so-called. You have maybe you want to help with some down payments on first homes, and, just help give your kids that head start and giving them a life that you did not have. There's nothing wrong with that, but we got to plan for that. Yeah. We got to make sure that we don't lose the roof over our head trying to put one over theirs. And unfortunately, we've done that to a certain extent. And I've unfortunately seen too many occasions where I've watched mothers spend down their retirement accounts trying to take care of kids that just didn't want to be saved. And unfortunately, it puts them between a rock and a hard place. And now they don't have the necessary funds that they need to have to pay for their own medication, to take themselves on a vacation, to enjoy their lives that they work so hard to have, because they allowed a bucket with a hole in it to drain them to a point to where now they're just prayerful that they can make it to the next day. They're prayerful that their money can just stay afloat long enough to offset inflation, to keep them paying bills at a level where they have enough to enjoy a meal out on the town from time to time. Yeah. And unfortunately, as inflation continues to grow and that fixed income that they have remains the same, is only going to put them in a worse predicament, because there was a lack of planning done, and there was a heartstring that was being pulled on by people that were taking advantage of them. So, and I tell people, financially, one of the greatest words that you can ever learn is no. And that's no to any and everybody. Yeah. You gotta know when to say when. And there's no one that's immune to being told no. Because when you tell someone no, you're not just telling them for them, you're telling them for yourself. And a no today don't mean it won't be a yes tomorrow. But it's just a no right now based on what's going on in my life. And I have to make sure that I take care of myself because I have a responsibility to me first and foremost. And then anything I can give, I'm willing to give to the greater good, to anyone around me after I've made sure that I'm taking care of my things and my responsibilities and my needs and my wants. See, I don't want to work 40 years and then you have to give up your wants because someone didn't take care of their needs.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's unfortunately what's happened on too many occasions.
No, that's good. And when you speak about those things, think about the scripture of Psalm 90 and 12 teach us to number our days. And when you start numbering your days, while we don't know exactly when our days are going to be up, but when you learn to number your days, then you start planning, right? You number your days, you plan your days, right? You have specific plans for everything that you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And then you take those plans to God. Then God organizes those plans and tell you yes, no, maybe, cuts it out, right? And whittles it down. And so when you think about the numbering of days, that's just a plan. And when you plan your days out, it helps you understand what goes in each one of those buckets and how you're going to spend everything that you have. And then that gives you peace because now I've planned out my days. I've considered God when I've made the plans. And then I've taken the resources that God has blessed me with and I've put them specifically in various buckets so that my days that I numbered, I will know what I need to spend on which numbered day, which numbered year, right? So which leads us to an abundant and prosperous living now, but then also an abundant and prosperous life in retirement.
Yes. Because
I think what also happens in retirement too, when we think about retirement, we limit ourselves only to what we want and not consider the fact of, like you said, okay, now kids, it never ends, right? Because then you have grandkids, prayerfully, and great grandkids and other family members, and all of these things come about in your life. And then also you also want to continue to support the various entities and things that you've been supporting. You still want to pay tithes out of your retirement. You still want to go and have that nice meal wherever you are. You still want to be able to travel to some nice places, right? You still want to have those things in life too. So you have to consider the number of the days that you have, and that's just basically laying out a plan. But then also something, another text that came to mind, Wilbert, as you were speaking, is Psalm 37:11 that says, "The meek shall inherit the earth, and they shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace."
Yes.
So when we talk about this inheritance of the earth, right, we talked about it even before that the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, right? So now if I stay humble before God, I number my days, I make the plans out, and I place those plans before God and pray over those plans, then God allows me to inherit what's God's, which is the earth, right? Because I stay humble before him. And when I inherit the earth, then I take the earth, what is of the earth, the wealth of the earth, and I place it in these various buckets. And it continues to grow, and then I'm at peace. And not only just at peace, but as that text in Psalm 37:11 said, an abundance of peace. Yes. That's a whole different level that now I would liken that to, that peace is like the windows of heaven opening up and pouring me out the blessing that I don't have room enough to receive. So the blessing that I don't have room enough to receive in the context of this text is an abundance of peace.
Yes.
And now when I get that much peace, then guess what happens? Everybody that is around me that they try to disrupt my peace, I give them some of this peace so that they can live in peace. And that's whenever you're around somebody and their life is hectic and everything is going awry, oftentimes it's because they have not numbered their days, meaning that they have not laid out a plan, and they don't get into the face of God. They are not praying. They are not considering the ways of God in the things that they're doing. So now they have too much disruptions, and they're not able to live in peace. But when you're around somebody and they live in peace, that peace comes off to you, right? When you're around somebody that has things and they live in abundance, you end up reaping benefits from them,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because they have more than enough. And so they end up sharing. And that's what we want everybody to do, is that when we're talking about living in peace, we want you to take your finances, bucket system those things out, number your days before God, and then God will allow you to inherit more, because an inheritance, right, comes through some form of wealth.
Yes.
Because wealth is not just monetarily.
Correct.
Right? Wealth is this peace that we're talking about.
Yes.
And we want to pass on
Peace.
the wealth of peace to our children and to our children's children and to our children's children's children. We want you to not only live in peace now, but have a generational wealth of peace, right? We always talk about generational blessings, generational curses. We talk about generational wealth, right? Well, a generational wealth is generational peace. How much peace are you passing down? And that's what we want you to consider today, is that when you're making your financial plans, that we've been talking about all year, having plans, numbering your days, knowing where your money is and how you need to manage it, then that's what's going to give you peace. But you need to pass that peace down. We talk about all the time the peace that surpasses all understanding. But now we want you to grow from that. That's base level. That's base level. Now we want you to grow into inheritance of the earth and everything that's in it, and then the abundance of peace that you have, and then you pass that on to others as well. So in doing that, you have to consider your budget at all times. Don't leave that budget. Stay there with that budget, because when I go to the scriptures, but that's what I think about, is the Bible is a lifestyle budget for us, that no matter what it is that I may face in life, I can go to the Bible. And that's what it is with the financial budget. No matter what goes on in your household and what type of money you have to spend, if you go to your budget, then you can manage yourself right. So I go to the Bible. The Bible is the budgetary guide for me, for my lifestyle. And we want all of you to do the same thing as well for your life. Go to the Bible first. Read the scriptures. Pray to God that God will guide you into doing the things that you need to do. And when I do that, then I'm able to do a risk assessment on myself.
Yes.
Because now when I read the scriptures, I gain an understanding of who I am and what my tendencies are. And then once I gain an understanding of myself, what my tendencies are, then I'm able to submit those to God. And God is able to guide me into doing what I need to do with those things. And then once I do that, now I've gained a calmness.
Yes.
And I'm able to function at a higher level. And now I begin to live in peace.
Yes.
And that peace grows in abundance. The more I stick to the plan of God and the plan on my budget, the more peace I have. And so we want all of you to do that. Stop veering off. We know we can take our eyes off the road, but get in the Word of God, and the Holy Ghost will be your sensor, just like these new vehicles, right? You have lane assist, you know what I'm saying, and all of these things. Well, let me tell you, the Bible is your lane assist. Laying out your budget gives you lane assist. And then we here at Closing the Gap are trying to assist you to keep you in the lanes of your financial plan, so that you can live in peace. And we'll see you back shortly. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, The Truth About Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here once again with our host and owner, Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And like we said, this episode is entitled "Living in Peace." Living in peace. So Wilbert, let's in this last segment, let's dive into a little deeper into the bucket and give the people some more clarity on what we're talking about essentially, and whittle it down to specifically what are in these buckets that we have for our lifestyle of retirement so that we live in peace.
Well, thankfully, since we've identified who and what can put a hole in our bucket, and we ain't trying to fill up no buckets with holes in it no more, we can definitely make sure that we utilize the buckets properly. And now that, of course, we've gotten right with the Lord, and He's helped us to put a number on our days, and we have an understanding that I plan to be here, so I got a plan to be here. And also now that we've done a self-check and a self-assessment, and we have a good gauge on our own risk profile and how aggressive and conservative we are after we've been given some peace, we understand, I have different goals and objectives. So now I can actually identify how to invest, because my risk profile changes based on my time horizon. And that's where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes, is when you don't have a plan and you don't understand what you're trying to get accomplished. And, right now I know I want to live to 90 plus, happy and healthy. Well, when I put together my financial plan, I'm running it out past 95 because I plan to be here. So I got to make sure that my money is going to be here past 90. So I want to make sure that I'm investing that way. So that means in a certain bucket, I have to be more aggressive. I have a short-term bucket, I have an intermediate bucket, and I have a long-term growth bucket. So there's a certain amount of money I'm putting away into my long-term growth bucket that I'm going to be a lot more aggressive with, because I have time on my side. Being 43 and 90 plus being, 50 years away. Now I'm in a situation where I have time to consistently invest, not worry about the ups and the downs in the market, consistently invest aggressively. And over time, the market is going to win more than it's going to lose. In my intermediate bucket, those are things where in the next, basically you'd say, 6 to 15 years. Well, I have some things that's going to happen between the next 6 and 15 years. That's when kids are going to college. That's when, there may be some kids getting married or helping buy some first homes. There's some first cars and things that are going to be in there that have to be taken care of. So I'm going to need to have some money put away for the intermediate things that's going to happen in life. Along the way, me and the wife want to take a vacation and go somewhere. We want to take a trip. We want to enjoy ourselves. There's some family trips going to be involved in there. And also, obviously, we have the short-term right now bucket. This is when your kids call and say, I got a field trip. This is when, your son grows too fast. He grew out all his shoes and you got to go buy all new shoes. And he don't want just any shoes. He want the new Jordans. He want the new, the new Yeezys. Or he want the new, the new Dunks or whatever it is out. That's what they want. We understand that because I've been wearing Jordans since '88. So I don't get mad with him. I understand. I'm going to take care. I'm going to make sure he got the J's on his feet, but originals only. We don't do the knockoffs. The originals only, baby. We don't do the knockoff. So anything ain't the original classic, we don't rock with them. We stick to the OGs only. But, me understanding that life is going to happen now. I need to be making sure I put away money in the now. So in the now, we have things like air conditioner goes out at home. That's a cost. You have a flat tire, it's a cost. Your kids outside playing baseball and they break a window. That's a cost. So all these things happen along with life. So you're always going to need money in the short term. And the way you invest short term is very conservative. You don't invest short term money trying to create a long term gain, because what happened is the money will fluctuate in a more aggressive investment. And when you need the money, it won't be there. So I know if me and my wife want to buy a new home in the next 3 to 5 years, where we're saving to accomplish that particular goal, well, I don't need that money to be volatile. I need to be there when I need to be there. Because if my boy T. Mill say, hey, man, I found the house and we ready to go and I'm ready to buy, I got to have a down payment today. I need the money to be able to push the button and move forward now. Not be in a situation where I got to wait for it to come back because I was too aggressive with my investments. I was investing in something that was too risky. So that happens on far too many occasions. People putting short-term money in what should be a long-term investment, not understanding the volatility that comes along with those more risky, more aggressive investments. And you needing the money right now says that you need to have that money in short-term, CDs, cash, treasury bills, short-term notes, things of that nature that are going to be more liquid and be more stable and accessible for you to utilize in the short term. Obviously, then we have those intermediate things. We talked about this, 6 to maybe 10 to 15 years. Okay. Well, that we want to invest a little bit different than we would the short term. We want to have some growth along with that. We want to be a little bit more moderate. We're going to be maybe balanced when it comes to that. When I put together a moderate portfolio, that portfolio usually going to be more 50-50. Maybe 50% fixed income and maybe 50%, stock or equities inside of that particular portfolio, because we got a little time for it to grow, but it's not a long time. Yeah. So we have to be cautiously optimistic with the investment. We have to make sure that, we're steady with that. We're not going all in, so to speak. We're not taking on risk in a new hot stock tip that may or may not pan out over time. No, we want to be consistent and steady in our short and our intermediate bucket of money. And then we have our growth bucket. That's our long-term bucket. That's what we really invest into, our stocks, our ETFs, our mutual funds that are going to be more on the aggressive side. That's when I don't want to say bet big, win big, but we want to bet big, but invest on sound financials and sound principles. Because see, most people think you got to take a big risk in order to get a big win. That's not necessarily true. You just have to be working with someone who has access to the right information to understand what kind of return on investment you need, because there are a lot of portfolios out there that have averaged double-digit returns for years and years that don't have as much risk as some of the others that people are familiar with. But if you don't understand the risk versus the reward, see, the goal of a financial advisor when you're working with one is, my job is to increase returns while lowering your risk. So I want to de-risk a portfolio. I don't want to take on a lot of risk if I don't have to, but I got to understand what kind of return I need to have first. So most people think in order to have a 10% return or better, they got to be betting everything and they're going to have the risk of possibility of losing all their money. And that's just simply not true. It's being in the right type of funds that are what's called actively managed, whereas everything is being paid attention to, where economic factors are being paid attention to, with interest rates are being paid to, with political factors are being paid attention to. So all of these things that go along with affecting how the market moves have to be watched and monitored, so you know what to do, when to do, and how to do. Making sure you have the proper asset allocation within the marketplace and within those investments, because most times people don't understand. There's an international, there's emerging markets, there's domestic, there's real estate, there's fixed income. There's a lot of areas when it comes to the market. And even within that, you got value stocks, you got growth stocks, you got different styles of stocks based on the type of companies that you are invested in. And some are more stable. They're blue chip stocks. So if you want dividends, you're looking for more income base, you want more consistency, you want more stability within the stock portfolio. That don't mean you can't lose, but that just means those stocks are going to be more stable and more consistent than maybe a growth stock, whereas all the money and the revenue from that company is being put back into research and development to grow and gain market share. Well, those things are going to be a lot more aggressive. Well, everything cuts on both sides too. If it's a lot more aggressive, that means it's a lot more risk. Now, does that mean you don't need to take on any of that risk? No, we need to identify how much of that risk we can afford to take on. But that's done when they do what you said first and they number them days. So now that we've numbered them days and we've actually gained an evaluation and assessment on ourselves from a risk profile standpoint, now I can identify my buckets and I'm willing to invest in each bucket differently, understanding my overall goal. See, me as a one individual person, I may have a certain risk profile, but when I understand the goals and objectives that I'm trying to get accomplished, I can change and I can morph into whatever I need to be to accomplish that goal. And by me having those multiple buckets serving those multiple purposes, I've now left no stone unturned. I'm never in a position where I'm going to lose everything if the market drops, because I got some short-term cash that's going to be stable. I have some intermediate cash that's going to be balanced. And I have my long-term investments that, guess what? Just like we hit that roller coaster ride in April, I stayed the course and I've come back since then, plus some. So unfortunately, we react way too fast when we don't have the right information, when we don't have the right resources, and when we don't have a plan. So when you got that plan that we told you about, and we've laid out in that plan, there's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad, but guess what? You just hold on. Yeah. It's a little while longer, and everything's going to be okay. But when you don't have a plan, you're going to be reactionary. So this is what we tell people when it comes to, the mistakes people make financially when it comes to investing. Most people react to what they see happening on TV. Most people react to what they hear from coworkers at work, but none of them are actually acting based on their own personal financial situation. So why are you making decisions on your investment account, or your 401k, or your brokerage account based on what you saw on TV and what you heard, but you don't know if that information actually applies to you? It may have nothing to do with you.
Right.
If your time horizon is 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, what's happening today doesn't serve any relevance to you. You just need to keep investing, because the greatest factor making money is time.
Yeah.
And the more time you have, the better off you're going to be, as long as you're consistent in your timing. So that's why we talked about that time frame. We talked about that, numbering them days and making sure we have the assessment done. So when you do that, now you've taken away the impatience. You've taken away the uncertainty. You've taken away a lot of the uncomfortability that comes along with investing, and actually comes along with life. And now you have what we talked about in the beginning. You have a retirement in peace. You have life in peace, because you've covered all your bases. You've checked all the boxes. You have your money that's secure for short-term, intermediate, and long-term. So what am I worried about now? I know everything is everything. I can just kick my feet up and just relax, knowing that peace be still, because everything is going to be okay.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Kicking your feet up, relaxing. That's what we're talking about, is living in peace. So when you get those buckets laid out, like Wilbur just said, then you can have that calmness. You can have that peace. You know what I'm saying? And the song says, I got peace like a river. All right. And I love that song, peace like a river. But also it takes it. We have to take the time and do the work. And I think that's what we don't like to do at times. We are not at peace because we have not taken the time to do the necessary work.
Yeah.
But if we get in the scriptures, and if God is our guide, and we allow the wisdom of God to inform us to do what we need to do, and we allow the examples of what God has done to lead us, then we'll be able to function and get done the things that we need to get done, and we'll be able to live in peace. And I say that because even in the book of Luke and in the Gospels, but specifically I want to just use the example in Luke 12:7. It says, but even the very hairs of your head are numbered. If God took the time to count the numbers of hairs on every person's head that he created, then we need to definitely take the time to count up all of our finances and our resources and manage them better. God is a God of peace because God knows the numbers of hairs on our head. God knows our thoughts before we think them. That's why nothing is a surprise to God, because the plan that God laid out from the beginning is still functioning. And although there's some disruptions that happen, God works them out because God is able to see them. And that's how we are supposed to function as well, is we are supposed to function as our God functions, right? Because we are children of God. God made us. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. So we should function in that same way. So God took the time and thought so much about you, thought so much about me, that God said, you know what? I'm going to give Eddie, I don't know how many hairs I have on my head, but you know what I'm saying? However many that is, right? Then I should also take that same amount of time and care and concern to take the time to manage what God has given me. But the second section of that same verse says that, you know, don't have any fear because you are more valuable than the sparrows. And when we start thinking about ourselves in that way and valuing ourselves the same way God values us, then we will start taking care of our finances. We'll start taking care of our retirement. We'll start taking care of our health, because we realize that, and since God has taken so much time, so much care to make sure that I am well and that I am here, then I'm going to take a good amount of time to do the same thing as well, and plays, because God values me. And if God values me, then I am going to value myself as well, because somebody cares about me. And that's always the loving thing about life, is that, as you talked about that earlier, about, hey, the evaluation of your children. You know your child better than anybody else. You know what each child's capabilities are. You know whether or not you need to invest in that child in this area or that area, or if that child comes and says, hey, Dad, I want to do this. You know that if you invest in that particular thing, that's just a bucket with a hole in it, right? Because you already know that that's not even their forte, that's not their interest, and they're just going to waste time doing that thing. And that's how it is with God, with us. God tells us no on some things that we ask God to do and ask God for, because God knows that, look, you tried that before. You didn't manage it well. You didn't even do that. That's not in your repertoire. So God says, no, I'm not going to help you out there. I'm not going to let you do that right there. Now, you may go do it on your own, and then it ends up failing, and you're going to have to come back to God to be able to move forward. But we need to think about the fact that God values us, and we need to think about the fact that God has numbered the hairs on our head, so we should manage our resources in that same way and function. So we go there, Will, but just for the sake of the community and the culture that we're in, I do want to say that, and let the people know that we need to change some of these numbers in our society. Some studies and research says that 1 in 5 Americans believe they'll never retire. And we want to, here at Closing the Gap, we're aiming to change that narrative. We want you to understand the value that God has for you, understand the value of the resources that you have. Set up a consultation to sit down with Wilbur here at Hamilton Wealth Advisors, so that you can put a plan together for yourself, and he can assist you in that plan so that you can retire. Nobody wants to have to work all their lives. Many of us are going to work, but nobody wants to be forced to.
Correct.
And so while you have some of your most healthiest years, we want you to get the peace that you need now, so that you can retire and live in peace for the rest of your lives. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode.